To be honest, I think staying full time in Europe is looking like what it's going to be. I mean, without a doubt, I'm gonna try and do the Daytona 200 again, and hopefully some MotoAmerica stuff again, and just kind of mix it up a little bit and stay fresh.
That's British Superbike Moto3 National Champion Brandon Paasch talking about 2020. He's our guest on today's show. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. This one is presented by Arai Helmets. And did you know that Arai helmets are lined with an antimicrobial material? Yep, the interior liner gives you odor resistance, dirt resistance, and those antimicrobials that you love so much. You can stay fresher longer and enjoy a comfortable ride in the latest Arai helmet. So go check out AraiAmericas.com, pick what you like, then head down to your local dealer for fitment and grab yourself a new lid, AraiAmericas.com. And with that, we welcome in my boy, Jason Pridmore. JP, what's up?
What's up, Greg? I'm just trying to handle the winds again. Seems like it's, a year ago at this time we were talking about winds and fires, and it's back in California. So it's been a pretty gnarly last couple of days. Not anything close to me, thank goodness, but yeah, and it's supposed to be 50-mile-an-hour winds tomorrow and Thursday, so not so good. But yeah, I had a good weekend, solid weekend. Got to watch some racing, so we're going to talk about that. But I was out at CVMA all weekend. I was there. I got to Chuckwalla Tuesday night, did one-on-ones Wednesday, Thursday. Got to ride on Friday. Thanks to the guys at Track Days for that. They let me ride on Friday, and I just had so much fun, Greg. I got this Kawasaki kit bike that Kawai's been kind enough to let me use, and I got to go do some laps with Alex Dumas and Wyatt Ferris. Good to see Wyatt back down, and man, they have like an hour-long racer practice at the end of the day, and I think I probably did more laps than anybody. I was out there the whole time just grinning, so it was fun.
Oh, is that right? So if you have a like an expert race license or you're a MotoAmerica racer, you can go out for like the last hour?
What they do, what Track Days does is they have like in the mornings, Friday morning, they'll have a racer practice. So everybody that's there that's going just for CVMA race weekend, they can pay for a Friday practice where it's just racers only, which is a nice thing because that way they can what they can do is the street day riders or guys without licenses won't be out, kind of during that time. Then they run their track day the whole time. And then when they're done with their track day, at the end of the day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they end up having another racer practice. So for those people that kind of drive in Friday afternoon that are there for the weekend, they can sneak out for an hour at the end of the evening and make sure their bikes are ready to go. Then they tech them and be ready for the races on the weekend. So on Friday, I rode with just a bunch of friends. I just got to go ride with some friends, and then I did the Friday night little racer practice that they did, and it was nice. I hadn't seen Wyatt in quite a while, ridden with him at all, so I rode with him a fair bit as I did with Alex Dumas. So it was kind of nice because it's been a bit of a struggle this year, and my body actually felt pretty solid, and so it's been good.
All right, we're still on course, still on track to get that rod out of your leg and then get your ankle handled.
Tomorrow I'm going to go down to Dr. Brian, and he's going to look at, we're going to consult about getting the rod removed from my leg first off from Australia. So we'll get that knocked out. And then I think it's probably going to be 3 or 4 weeks after that. I'll get my leg fused is what the plan is now. So I'll go down tomorrow. I'm probably going to go and wait till just after CVMA weekend at Chuckwalla again in 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks. I'll go in, get the rod removed. And then after I get the rod removed, 4 weeks after that, I'll get the 3 to 4 weeks after that, I'll get the fusion done, and then just have Christmas and New Year's, and I'll be watching a lot of college football and all that good stuff, hanging out a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited about it, Greg, because I feel like it's I'm not going to be in pain. That's going to be the main thing. I got to just look at that now, and it might not be the ideal situation, but I just won't be in pain anymore. So that's going to be nice.
Yeah, over the weekend, I was supposed to go to the GNCC race and do all that stuff, but I just, some family stuff, I couldn't make it work. But then I got a call from Chuck Giacchetto from WorldSBK Racing saying, hey, by the way, we're going to be at VIR right up the street from me, testing on Monday if you want to come out and hang out. So, I did a bunch of Facebook Live stuff from the test, and the guys were good. Matthew was totally chill. It was during a track day. PRE, I think, is the name of the organization. Good, good bunch of people. Really, chill track day. It was 72 degrees. It's sunny. There was hardly any wind. The track was kind of slippery in the morning. VIR, it's getting kind of beat up. I don't know what's going on with the last time they resurfaced it, but it's getting pretty beat up. But it was nice to be at the track. I didn't get to go out on the track like I would have wanted to. And I rode up there on my motorcycle, which is the Triumph Street Triple, the 675 Street Triple, which is just the Triumph Daytona 675R with higher pegs or lower pegs, I guess, and just higher handlebars. But I mean, there were 4 of them out there, guys doing track. I could have and I have Q2.
That's great.
I have Dunlop Q3s on. So I was like, man, maybe, if I brought my leathers, I would have just taken that thing around for a few laps. But anyway, it was a nice ride up there on Monday. I got to do some Facebook Live stuff. And
I saw, some people talked to me about that just today. I know you and I talked this morning a little bit, but today I had a couple friends talk to me about, they saw some of your Facebook Live stuff and it was real positive. And all those guys, like the WorldSBK team are all good dudes. Like they're just, was Herschel and Ed and all them guys?
Herschel was there. The only person I think that's normally there was Dustin Mader. He wasn't there. I think he was at home.
I was just going to say it's Dustin.
Frank
Shockley.
Shockley, yeah, Frank Shockley was there. And of course, Ed, the crew chief.
Yeah. All those guys are great guys. Like they got such a nice chill vibe. I'm sure they disagree on race weekends, but with the little bit that I saw and hung out with them a little this year, Matthew's great. And obviously Chuck, he's awesome. So, I mean, all those guys, pretty fun and pretty cool that you went up there and did that on your own time and just kind of hung out. I like that.
Yeah. And one of the biggest takeaways, Jay, from that for me personally was, normally when I've been around factories testing, they have agenda that's set forth that says, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, whatever. And WorldSBK had that. But one of the biggest things that they wanted to work on was how they communicate data back and forth. And they wanted Matthew to learn a little bit more about the data and about the way he rode. And I did an interview with him after, and Matthew was like, look, I go from off throttle to on throttle. He basically just stabs the thing wide open. And what the team is trying to work on him with by showing him data and getting him to try different things on the bike was how the electronics react when you roll the throttle on. So
much different.
Yeah.
It's so much different.
So some people may look at that and go, well, you're testing during a track day. You're not getting an outright lap time. Yeah, I don't really think that was the goal. The goal was on used tires to go out there and to try to extend the life of the tire. When the Dunlop is fresh and good, extend that life and then really work on, his throttle application and the way that he reads data with the guys and the way that he gives his feedback. So
yeah,
overall, I think it was a successful test from their perspective. And they're going to go out to COTA the last day of November and the first day of December. They're going to be out at COTA testing as well. So they're out there bombing around. I did ask him about the Ridge, what his plan was, to go test the Ridge. No one can test Indy as far as I know. Indy doesn't do any track days. So, Matthew had been there like when were 2008, I think. Was it 7 or 8 when Red Bull Rookies Cup, he was in that race.
So crazy to think that. It's so funny watching these guys grow up. I mean, I've never actually even been there, so I wouldn't be able to tell you when that was, Greg. I know you went there quite a bit, so
yeah,
or at least a few times.
I went there for all the GP races. I was there, and then I got to test the bike there. I've ridden there, so somebody's actually asked me for my onboard footage because I have a bunch of onboard footage. I'm like, well,
you got to speed it up.
That's what I was going to say. I put it at 3 times maybe, and then and to just render it out, and
What if they completely bamboozle you and put it out for everybody else to see? Can you might get ridiculed? No, we can't have that.
The first bunch of laps,
can't give up that.
First bunch of laps were in the rain on an EBR in the rain with great electronics, by the way. Again, I've told you and
you love that bike. I remember you loved it.
Yeah, I did. But it was on Pirellis, like street Pirellis, and I was tiptoeing through the tulips. Adam Wahid was there, who's a journalist, and that dude on stock Pirellis had his knee on the ground. And I was like, "Have at it, dude. I'll see you later."
Oh my god, yeah, that's me too. I'd be like, check please.
Yeah, later, dude.
No thanks.
But what ended up happening in that day, Jay, was that it rained like the first half of the day, and most of the journos were like, "I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this." And by 2:00, it had dried up, and just myself and one other journalist was there with the entire fleet of bikes. They had the track ran until 5:00. So pretty much from 3:00 to 5:00, I rode as much as I could on a dry track. And I just would jump from one bike to another bike if the tires started to move around. And it was an amazing, amazing day of riding. Yeah. It's a very interesting racetrack that we're going to go to. The Turn 1 area and all this stuff. It's got a mix. It's very flat, but it's going to be very interesting to go to. But speaking of last time we were there, MotoGP was racing at Indianapolis. We did have some MotoGP action at Phillip Island. You want to get into it now, dude?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, when I watch Phillip Island now, I've got such a different appreciation for it because having ridden there, you know. But man, Greg, the conditions are so much worse now at this time of year. You know, kind of their winter. I guess it would be over there because the conditions are just brutal. It looks cold and windy, and every time we're there,
so it's
is it spring?
Yeah, it's
okay,
spring and the beginning of summer. And it's bad. It's that transitional weather like we're all going through here in the States anyway. Same thing, just the opposite down there. So yeah, you get wind and crap and all kinds of stuff.
Oh man, it just looks. But you know, even those you talk to the locals in Australia, they'll tell you like some summer days it'll be 90 degrees, and the next day it's 60 and blowing sideways. So I know that the conditions on the island itself. But you know, I had friends of mine that went over to Australia. I had at least 6 or 7 of them this weekend, just reaching out and saying, Jason, like, how cool is it that we've ridden there and we've been there? But it doesn't look like the same place to me on TV than when we go over because it's hot and usually just gorgeous when we've been over there the last 2 years. I'm going to miss going. But I mean, look, again, one guy showed his dominance, didn't he, Greg? I know I'll let you read the results and all that, but it's just pretty incredible what Marquez is doing this year.
It's amazing. He wins by 11.4 seconds over Cal Crutchlow. Not the story of the race. The story was Maverick Vinales, Marc Marquez. We'll talk about that in a minute. Jack Miller, obviously from Australia, came out of basically nowhere. He finishes 14.5 seconds behind Marquez, but third place over Pecco Bagnaia, who was like right on his tailpipe. And then Joan Mir on the Suzuki had a good ride. Come on. Andrea Iannone gets Aprilia's best. And that dude led the race. Dude, he led on an Aprilia. Yeah, we had more lead changes. I don't know the statistic. I'm just going off of like what I think. But there seemed to be
off memory, right?
There seemed to be more lead changes at this Phillip Island race than there's probably been, you know, at any other race this season. In terms of different riders leading, you know what I mean? It could be 2 riders going back and forth. I don't know. But you had, let's see. I wrote this down. So you had Rossi jumps out to the lead, and then you have Petrucci and Quartararo that got into it, crashed. We'll talk about that. Then Crutchlow led, then Andrea Iannone led for a little bit, then Maverick Vinales led, then Marquez took the lead on the last lap.
Crazy.
But anyway, so Dovizioso finishes 7th. Rossi ends up 8th. Rins 9th. Surprised about that one. Aleix Spargaro in 10th. Morbidelli 11th. Pol Espargaro in 12th, the first of our KTMs. And then you had Johan Zarco in 13th on the Honda. That was the big talking point. Carol Abraham in 14th and Hafiz Cyrene, Jason, in 15th place, grabbing the last point. And then 1 minute and 6 seconds. I'm going to say that again. 1 minute and 6 seconds adrift of Marc Marquez was 3-time world champion Jorge Lorenzo. Maverick Vinales.
Can we work from the bottom up on this real quick?
Yeah.
Can we?
By the way, Vinales, Kallio, and Rabat, they didn't finish the race along with Quartararo and Petrucci because of that first lap incident. So I hand it over to you, my friend.
Well, a couple questions, right? Mm-hmm. First off, have you ever seen a crazier crash than Petrucci high-siding himself into a guy that had ran wide and was kind of trying to get his bike under control, Fabio Quartararo, and just bowling balls him over with his body? Now, we saw Michael Gilbert this year use his face to take out Stefano Mesa.
Sorry, Gilbert.
Pretty good, I have to say. He used his head pretty well there to actually clean out Mesa at Pittsburgh. I don't think I've ever seen – you know what? I can't say that. Do you remember when Nicky at Sachsenring high-sided into somebody? I can't remember who it was, Greg, but it was in the wet. I do remember that when Nicky actually high-sided almost onto the back of the person's bike. But this was just like a full bowling ball thing here, wasn't it? This was
and in the dry. You know, wet.
This is in the dry.
Wet. We tend to expect some crazy things, but in the dry, yeah.
No, I mean, I just never seen anything like that, and I just remember, you know, what I'm always trying to remember these little things for our podcast because when I saw that, I just couldn't even. I was like, wow, like I didn't really think a body could take a bike out like kind of the way that looked, but it was instantaneous how quick he took out Quartararo, who had a rough weekend, didn't he? In all shapes. I mean, he high-sided pretty good there in Siberia, the turn they call Siberia, and he ends up getting back on and doing a really good job after missing the one dry session there on Friday afternoon to get himself up on that front row and so on. I just felt like it was a bit of a shame to see him go out. We really haven't seen too many bad things from Fabio this year. But he ran a little bit wide after losing the rear going in, just like Petrucci did, who ended up actually taking him out and falling. But the thing I wanted to talk about working from the way up is, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but Lorenzo, I mean, when you read what he says and the things he is saying, you just got to wonder now. I'm really starting to think to myself that the guy is still really, really hurt or something isn't right, because I don't know why he's putting himself through this. To be a minute 6 behind your teammate, there's a couple other factors I look at. He's 22 seconds behind Hafiz Sarin, who is definitely moving on, going to Moto2. He doesn't have a job in MotoGP, and Lorenzo's 22 seconds behind him. I don't think any of us at the beginning of the year would say, do we think that if both bikes finished that Lorenzo would be 22 seconds behind Hafiz Sarin? And that's no knock on Sarin. It's just the reality. More importantly, he's 40 seconds behind a guy that just jumped on a Honda for the first weekend.
I know.
Johan Zarco. What do you think's going on? Honestly, I'm past the point of feeling sorry for the guy. Like, I feel like not sorry for him. I got my words mixed up. I'm past the point of like being, I don't want to use the word angry or
like making excuses puzzled. For him, maybe
like puzzled. Yeah, I feel bad for him almost now. Like, I mean, he's tacky. I saw a quote where it said, "I'm hoping that I can just find my Motegi pace again." 2 weeks ago, did he do something at Motegi that I don't remember?
Maybe he met Motegi 5 years ago. I don't know.
I mean,
no, he was fast. He was closer to the front at Motegi.
Well, I mean, Greg, he's only, what was he, 20 seconds up the road from being lapped in this race? 23 seconds, I guess it would be. I mean, so it's insane.
At Motegi, he finished 40.4 seconds behind Marquez. He was 17th, so he was 2 positions out of. I mean, who would have?
I don't know. It's puzzling to me. Puzzling.
Yeah, I guess only he knows really what's going on, but it is baffling. And I'm kind of with you. It's like I got to think that when
Marquez and those guys are cresting the hill, coming up over the little rise on the front straightaway,
see him.
They had to have seen him going from yeah, exactly. They had to have seen a flash of orange going from turn 2 into Stoner, and it's like, I mean, I know they're not looking for that. I'm just saying that if they actually were,
well, listen.
I mean, he was
the fastest lap of the race was a 1:29.3, right? So I haven't looked at the lap chart, but I'm guessing that just say they raced in the 1:30s. So
correct.
He was only 24 seconds away from being lapped.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, it just like, so you kind of almost have to think,
holy shit, Lorenzo's my people.
Riding?
Bro, Lorenzo's my people.
Yeah.
Lorenzo has become my people. Back of the pack road racer.
I know. It's so.
No, I mean,
I don't even know what to say.
I'm joking because I have mad respect. The guy's 3-time world champion. When he was on that Yamaha, he was unbelievable. The last half of the year, or, last year on the Ducati, unbelievable. And I still think he's got it. So you can't say that the Honda is such a pile that it's a minute 6 seconds behind. That's you can't. Like logically, you can't deduce that, it's the setup, like not a guy of his caliber. So the only thing that I'm thinking of, like you're thinking, is he's got to still be hurt. Something has got to be wrong with him physically. You know what I mean? Yeah. In order for
because he's just kind of taking it on the chin too. He's like coming out and doing his interviews and doing his things. I know PR wise, you got to do some of that.
Yeah, but he's finishing. And races I can't believe we're spending. Think about it. He's not.
That's what
he's
I mean.
Not pulling in.
It's crazy.
He's out there gutting it out, and it's like,
isn't it?
I don't know.
No, man, I tell you, it's strange to me. And I mean, look, let's just say for argument's sake as well, we've been talking all year about how only one guy could ride the Honda. Well, it really didn't seem like that was the case this weekend. Crutchlow did a great job finishing second. Obviously, with Vinales going out, we'll talk about that stuff here in a second. But I mean, the Hondas obviously showed to be a little bit better of themselves. And I can't remember a time this year where Johan Zarco has been within like 10, 12 seconds of a podium. He was 12 seconds off podium, which is Jack Miller, which when you think about it over all the laps that they did, it's really not that far off.
Yeah.
For the guy jumping on a bike first session out in the wet. Greg, the thing I've got to think to myself, and tell me if I'm going off on something weird tangent here, but Zarco loved the Yamaha, didn't he? He loved it.
Loved it.
And he got All right. And he got offered a position at Yamaha to be a test rider. And I know a racer is a racer and so on. I'm sure that he could have gone to another series. Maybe World Superbike would have welcomed him. Obviously, he doesn't want to do that. I got to think that the next best thing for him at the time was to take a Yamaha offer to go do some testing or even try to get in a wild card, couple few of those as well. There could be some shakeups in Yamaha seats in the next year or so, correct?
Yep.
So don't you think there has to be a reason why he does a 3-race deal on a Honda? I mean, do you think that it could even be a possibility at all that Honda says, all right, we're going to pay off Lorenzo for a year and we're going to absorb that, which is, it's probably a big chunk of change, and put Zarco on the bike next year? Or I mean, he's really the only one that would be available. This could have been a way they could have dangled the carrot in front of him saying, we'll put you on Nakagami's bike for the next 3 rounds. I don't know who else they would have put on it. I mean, they would have put Brodel on it, wouldn't they, Greg? If
Yeah, but he's in the middle of testing 2020 stuff and the new CBR 1000 stuff. So,
but wouldn't they have let him come and do it? I mean, wouldn't they have let him? He wasn't racing anywhere on the weekend. I got to think that if they needed that, they've got a Honda test rider who's been testing their bikes and doing their World Superbike. I get it, but if they're not looking for something, or what I'm getting at here is, I feel like maybe, who knows, maybe there's a chance that there's no way the powers that be at Honda are going to accept a guy finishing a minute 6 back on a factory bike. Is there?
I don't see it. The only reason they will is because they have Marquez, because the dudes, you know what I mean? Like it's not unprecedented to move a rider down a team. We saw it with Ben Bostrom when he was in World Superbike. They moved him down to the team, and then he started a win streak. Remember, like they pulled him off the factory team. The thing about the Brodel situation is that you wouldn't want Brodel getting in on the bike that Johan Zarco's riding, because Brodel's in the middle of testing 2020 stuff. Why would you put him on 2018 gear when you have a guy available?
Well, I get that.
Right. So what you would do then is go, okay, if we're saying the 2018 bike is an easier bike to ride than the 19, why not just say, hey, Lorenzo, go get some new leathers. We're going to move you down to this team because, Nakagami's out, and Brodel, you step in and ride the 19 bike. Again, I don't know, contracts, the politics. We don't know what's going on with Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Maybe
no, we don't.
Maybe he announces retirement. I don't know. I mean,
But Brodel's on the payroll already. That's what my thinking is. Like, he's on the payroll already. He's a Honda guy. There's already talk about Zarco going to Yamaha. Like, where did all this come up from the Honda perspective or manager perspective, where Honda said, oh yeah, let's take him away from that Yamaha thing and let him come ride this Honda? Like, what does the future really hold for Zarco? I don't think he did a bad job on the weekend. I think it's ironic that he ends up finishing 1/10 of a second behind the KTM that he just got off of. He was closer to Paul Espargaro than he's been all year long, wasn't he? I mean, he was at least there. And the other thing that was really interesting, Greg, is 3rd through 10th place was essentially just 2 seconds. I mean, literally from Jack Miller down to Aleix Espargaro in 10th was 2 seconds, 2.1 to be exact. So the racing was very, very tight. Crutchlow ends up 3 seconds up the road ahead of them with a tire that was just shredded by his admission there at the end of the race. But I mean, when you look at Marquez and you look at, go back to the front here, I guess, where we haven't talked about it. If you're Yamaha, are you a little embarrassed by the speed differential from that Honda to the Yamaha? When they're showing that aerial coverage, I bet you every time they were doing that, Yamaha was just covering the TV.
Well, yeah, but the problem is that you're stuck with your motors, and this is.
I get it.
But Jay, hold on.
I get it.
Let me backtrack a little bit. So, this is the thing with the Stefan Brodel thing, who's on the payroll. It is so frantic right now, preparing for 2020, that he doesn't have time, because Honda is so concerned about what Ducati's doing. Ducati's concerned about what Honda's doing. Suzuki needs to catch up. Aprilia needs to catch up. Yamaha's got a lot of work to do. So it's. The season is the season. I mean, basically right now, and this is my problem with them adding extra races to the calendar, the season in essence is over. There's no more parts being thrown at the 19 bikes. That's been gone now for a couple of race weekends. It's all about 2020 right now. People are pretty settled, in their championship. There's a couple places left to be decided. So for sure, a valuable resource as Stefan Brodel is not going to be pulled just to get a result. I mean, just pay Zarco, whatever. I mean, what do you pay him? 50 grand, 30 grand a race, 20 grand. I don't even know what you pay him, but
Yeah, who knows? I don't know either. I just know if it was Gintoli or Michele Pirro, and I know they're on the new stuff, but it just seems like they've always been able to, Gintoli comes in, comes and rides the factory bike. Bradley Smith jumping on the Aprilia. Pirro. You looked at Folger, jumped on earlier this year.
Too late in the year though. Too late. It's 2020 now. I'm serious. It's 2020 now. If you're the factory team, that's all you care about. And because of limited testing and because of when you have to pick your engine configurations, this is what you got.
And who knows? Maybe that deal. I mean, it sounded like the deal is off the table from the Yamaha side of things with Zarco, but maybe it's not. But yeah, crazy race. But going back to what I was saying earlier, the speed differential of the Honda to the Yamaha in that race. I mean, Vinales rode amazing, and now I just feel like in a way, the last 3 rounds that we've watched, Marquez just sits there.
Yeah. So let me describe it in case anybody didn't get to see it. Okay. So when the race kind of sorts itself out, it becomes a Marquez following Maverick Vinales affair. And when there's a couple onboard shots they show, when they come onto the front straightaway, Maverick just rolls out of it. I mean, he just flat out rolls out of it and just stays.
Marquez does.
I'm sorry, Marquez. Sorry, Marquez does. Yeah, it's too many M's. Marquez, Maverick.
Yeah.
All right. So Marquez just keeps rolling out of it, and he sits back there until the time when you think he's going to pounce, which is on the last lap. But he blew by him so big down that front straightaway, and Maverick reeled him in.
Oh.
So then the big crash. Okay. So one of the things that Maverick said, and I agree with him, the season's over at this point. So Maverick's like, I'm winning or I'm going to put it in the gravel trap. But it was a weird crash. I mean, it looked to me like a multitude of factors played into why Maverick crashed. Now, explain where he crashed, Jason, what the track was like, and how it all unfolded.
Well, I think it's great to talk about. I watched the onboard a few times, and if you really pay attention, he's coming up over the top of Lukey Heights, which is, you have no idea how steep it is actually until you've done it. Like when I came up over the top of that the first time, it's one of the few places in the world that I've gone that it's nothing like the corkscrew, but it's as steep almost, it seems, as when you come up over the top of the corkscrew and go down. That's still really steep, but when you come up over the top of Lukey Heights, it's really downhill a lot. So it looked to me like once he realized he was pretty strong going in there, it looked, if you watch the replay, his bike is still pointing over to the left, almost like what he was then going to try to do when he realized that avenue was going to be closed for him to go down the inside of Marquez at the bottom of MG. Basically, it looked like he was trying to pull the bike back over to the left a little bit to try to let go of the lever through MG and carry a little corner speed, maybe try to do something to duff up Marquez in the last turn or two. But what it was the bike was actually leaned to the left. His body had just started to kind of pick itself up to get ready for the right. And it sounded like he did a downshift as well. And I know, with the electronics and seamless gearboxes and things like that, it was very coincidental to me that there was kind of 3 things that happened. 1, his body was already moving from one side to the next. 2, he was doing a downshift right at the time. The bike was still on the edge of the tire, on the left part of the tire. And, probably a little bit of front brake, a back shift, I don't know. But the bike just kind of snapped out from underneath him and down it went. And man, how crazy would it have been if it had cleaned out Marquez with that too? I mean, it wasn't that far, was it? I mean, it didn't look far anyways.
No,
so
it would have been crazy.
And he was trying, man. I mean, look, the guy was fast all weekend. Last year, he walked away from those guys. If you remember, he rolled away, in that race, and
he was on it all. He was on it all weekend, but okay,
all weekend,
all right.
all weekend,
now, and not something I normally do, but let's just play, crystal ball here. Had Vinales gotten around Marquez at some point, okay, let's just say it was even he stopped him last lap. Is Maverick winning that race?
Nope.
No. There's no way.
Chance.
The Honda's
going to go by him down the front straightaway. If it was right out of the last corner, maybe.
Yeah, the start finish line had moved back. If it was right out, yeah, maybe. But
and there was something that Marquez said that I loved in the interview afterwards, and it really brought me back to days of when I would ride and race. And what that was there are times when you have guys that are going to be fast in the race, but you don't know how sustainable their pace really is. And Marquez says that when Vinales went by him, he knew if he could just stay there for 3 or 4 laps, and just because he figured that that Vinales was going to really push hard for like 3 or 4 laps. And he thought, if I can just push just as hard for those 3 or 4 laps, it's very, very difficult. And it's something that I brought up here on the podcast before about being able to run a sustained lap time, lap after lap after lap, and just be banging them out. That was what Lorenzo has been so good at in the past. Obviously, Marquez, Rossi, all the greats, including Vinales, have been able to do that. But Marquez said that there was, it was big work for him for those 4 or 5 laps to just stay with Vinales. And then once that happened, the pace dropped 2 or 3 tenths, which allowed, and along with the motor that he had down the front straightaway, it allowed Marquez to find it a little bit easier to run with. Once you've followed a guy a few laps and you realize that even if you lose 3 tenths in a lap, if you can make that back up on the front straightaway and be there in turn 1 again, and you lose your 3 tenths and you could be back there again, it puts a lot of pressure on the guy leading, because they see +0 on their board for 16, 17 laps, and you start to really think, this guy's kind of playing me a little bit. You know what I mean, Greg? Like, he's just...
Yeah, totally.
If you're Vinales, you're just kind of... But, I thought it was a great race. It was fun to watch. I really wish that we could have seen that battle from, 3rd to 10th a little bit more. We saw a lot of it. But it was really close at the finish between all those guys.
Yeah, they were knocking each other around. And there's always that little thing. It's the Pramac Australian Motorcycle GP. Miller, Australian, puts it on the podium.
That's so cool, huh?
You know what I mean? The owner of Pramac is happy, and Bagnaia finishes right behind him in 4th. It's those little wins that you get, even with your sponsors and the fans, and Jackson Winter Circle swearing, and I love it, I
think it's so cool. I mean,
me too.
The Pramac bikes finished a 10th apart from each other. Bagnaia finally showed form that I was kind of expecting him to have shown earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're exactly right. The Pramac Ducatis finished 2nd, 3rd, or 3rd, 4th. Take nothing away from Cal Crutch, though. He rode amazing as well at a track that he loves. A track that a year ago, some people were questioning if he was going to come back from that big ankle injury that he had.
So was he.
And, yeah, so was he. That's what I mean. And for him to finish 2nd, he would have been on the podium regardless of Vinales, I thought was special. And there was just some other special things that happened. I think Joan Mir finishing 5th.
Yep.
We got 2 rookies in the top 5. And you're right, Greg. I have been very critical of Aprilia on this thing. Not that anybody cares probably, but to see, not only did Iannone lead the race, which I would have thought it would have been Aleix instead of Iannone. Iannone's been kind of off the map most of the year, all year, I guess. Iannone leads the race, showed what he's actually capable of, didn't care who he's racing against, like the Marquezes or any of them. But we had 2 Aprilias in the top 10, which I thought that was pretty incredible, pretty good to see.
Coincidental after... You remember the president of Aprilia Racing took responsibility last week for the problems they had,
Yep.
And all of a sudden they have these results. Now, I don't know if you saw, there was a 20-minute session they did for the 2020 rear tire. It was a rear tire Michelin test. Did you get to see that session at all?
I saw about 8 seconds of it over and over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, Iannone was 2nd in that session.
Wow, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So
you know what I'm talking about, though, right?
What? No, what?
Marquez. Do you see a save in that session?
Oh, he had, yeah. Oh, God. You mean the 70.8 degrees of lean angle?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw that. He had another one. He had another one at the kind of like in the middle of turn 1.
Oh my gosh. There was a MotoGP put up a thing on their Instagram page today on Instagram that of Marquez losing the front and Doohan losing the front. You really should go pull that up. If you haven't seen it,
I'll check it out. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's a thing of Marquez losing the front in turn 1 and Doohan losing the front in turn 1. And keep in mind, that's, what is that, Greg? 1990, would have been late 90s probably. So we're looking at 20 plus years ago, maybe that mix front end went in turn 1 and with a little different result. The kids, he's not made of the same stuff the rest of us are. I don't.
Well, in that 20-minute session, I mean, it was not. Like, finally, I got to see for my own eyes that it wasn't just reactionary luck on his part, because that thing it tucked under. And if you watch him, he moves his body position to on top of the bike like a motocross bike. So he's got his knee dug into the ground. He moved his body position over. Why, Jason? Because he needed more leverage to hold onto the bike. Because when you hang off and you have your chins past your wrist, you lose leverage. And he was instantly able to feel it, move his body to get leverage, dig his knee in, control the front end, and it was so weird the way it caught. It slowed down so much, and the thing just goes "Whack," and caught right up, and then he rolled it off. And I loved my favorite thing about that save was him like celebrating
Pumping
with
up
the
the crowd.
fans after. Yeah, he was so good.
So
He was
cool.
just like, because I think he was amazed at himself. You know.
Do you think, Greg, when you look back at this year in MotoGP, do you look back at it and say that this arguably could be one of the best championship runs by one rider like Marquez in the history of the sport? I mean, when you look at the depth of the talent, I mean, I know there were the Agostini days and Phil Reed days back in those days. I don't think that there was as much parity as there is now in the championship. I think that now when you look at the money being dumped in it from so many different avenues and the level of riding and all that kind of stuff, like I can't imagine that 60, 80, 40 years ago that we had, the top 10 bikes within 16 seconds of each other back then, very often. But I'm saying when you look at what's that?
I said, pick a year. We want to go 2005.
Well, I mean, you could go 2005. I'm saying that when you look at
25 seconds from first to 10th.
Yeah. Okay. So, and if you go even further back to in the 90s and just pull up a Phillip Island race from there and see what it is from first to 10th. The thing I'm trying to say though is Marquez has finished first or second in every race but one this year.
I know.
Am I right on that? Am I right on that? I'm right.
You're right. First and second. Like,
and the one he didn't finish in, he was leading by 4 seconds when he tipped off.
Yeah.
One
little mistake in the slow corner. Yeah.
How anybody, look, he's unreal. Different people on week in, week out are going to throw themselves at this guy. And, he just continues to just, bat him away. Just like,
all right, let's blow your mind a little bit. All right. So 1996. Okay.
Yeah.
Australian Grand Prix at Eastern Creek. Loris Capirossi wins 45 minutes, 47 seconds. Tadayuki Okada in second place, 10.9 behind. Checa, 11.3 for the box. Kenny Roberts Jr. finished 11:33 and a half seconds back.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go through, obviously it's not 100% what we're saying, what you're saying, but I agree with you. I just think that things seem to be tighter. Racing seems to be, but Marquez.
Well, there's more money in it now. I mean, the availability of the equipment in itself, you got to think that, when you look at the equipment that these guys are on, Greg, you got to say that now. I mean, you and I have had this discussion on the podcast as well. That 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, the satellite bikes weren't anything like they are now.
Yeah,
satellite bikes now are way better than they were then, and that's why you got the Quattararos and some of those guys that are capable of showing. I mean, Bagnaia and Miller, they're on so-called satellite bikes. I mean, I know that they're getting factory stuff, but next year they will be on like full factory stuff, if I'm not mistaken. So it just seems like the equipment just continues to get better for the guys that aren't actually the main manufacturer's riders,
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I think it's great. So, now they're going to roll on this week to Sepang. It's a tough 3 weeks for them on the road. And, we'll preview that here in a bit. Did you watch Moto2 at all?
Oh, of course I did. Good race.
Yeah. Great race. Brad Binder wins it, which keeps his title alive, and we'll talk about that. I think we're starting to see the emergence of Jorge Martin, ends up second. Luthi third, Navarro, Baldassari, Remy Gardner brings it home sixth in his Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix. Iker Lecuona, after plowing through some guys and then taking what do they call it? Long lap penalty or whatever they call it. So he ends up seventh. Marquez eighth. Manzi's actually been pretty solid last 2 or 3 races. Nagashima ends up 10th, Greg. Then Marshall Schroeder, Bulaga, Raffin, Digi Antonio, who's just kind of up and down to me. Boben Schneider ends up 15th. And what's a shame about that is our guy, Joe Roberts, was just a little over second out of getting that last point. And he's back there racing with Enea Bastianini, Locatelli. Augusto Fernandez was back there. I mean,
he beat
Sam
Lowe,
joke.
Jake Dixon. He beat some big names.
No joke. He did, man. This is just, it's no joke. I mean, how gnarly that stuff is. The thing I'm taking away from Moto2, and I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you a question, but are you getting this little feeling in your guts that Alex Marquez is going to choke this thing away?
I've been thinking about that. and I'm going to say no, okay, only from this standpoint. Imagine him just sitting on top of the pile of points that he has, and all these people just kind of come up, and then they make a mistake. And so he gets the points, the kind of the lead, the points gap, the cushion back. And then another guy comes up and then kind of fails. Now it's like Brad Binder is up there, and then who is in third place? Who's like
Binder's second, Thomas Luthi. Sorry, Luthi's in second, Binder's in third. So it's 28 points right now. It's 28 points right now between Marquez and Luthi.
You know what I mean, Jay? So Marquez has been kind of controlling the championship. Yeah, he has not been a front runner on his game the last couple races, but yet it's not like you have one rider that is catching him. It's like someone's close, and then they kind of choke, and then all of a sudden Luthi's now in second. And Brad Binder's clawed his way up. And what happened to Navarro? What happened to Fernandez? That's the way it feels to me. And there's only 50 points left. And it's going to take something big for Marquez to lose his championship.
Let me put it to you this way, okay? I just feel like something bad's brewing. I'd love to see him win the championship. I think following in his brother's footsteps isn't the easiest thing in the world. But you can tell the two guys, they're definitely different from each other. Marc Marquez has this ability to go and put his foot on the throat of any competitor that lets him. So if you give him a little bit, he's taken a whole lot. I feel right now, Alex Marquez at Motegi looked awful. I said it last week, the first 10 laps, he rode so bad and looked so frantic and so desperate is a good word to get where he is. That race could have ended for him multiple times. Now, the problem that you have in these races, to me, is that you can't just finish 8th or 9th or 10th or 12th. It's like you're in. I mean, look, he beat Stefano Manzi by 0.6 of a second, and just in almost rapid order, Nagashima was right behind him. 3 seconds behind that is Schroeder and Bulaga. He was in the position here that 8th could have been 12th very, very easy. And with a 28-point lead again over
Thomas
Luthi right now, I think that there's no way this championship doesn't go on to the final round. And I got to think to myself, if that final round was in anywhere but Spain, anywhere but his home country, the amount of pressure that will be put on him, if these guys get within 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 points of him going into that final round, I don't know, man. I feel like there's something brewing here with him, and he's riding tight. He doesn't look like he's riding loose at all to me. I just feel like he's riding very tight.
Well, let me check this out there to you. Is Xavi Vierge good enough to help Alex Marquez win this championship? Because my argument is that Jorge Martin is good enough to help Brad Binder right now. The last couple races.
No, he's not good enough. Vierge can't keep it up on two wheels. He literally cannot keep it up on two wheels. So he's not shown that he can sustain a lap for more than 5, 6, 8, 10 laps. I mean, that's why he's not on this team next year. There's something in my stomach that's making me feel uneasy about Mark. I mean, look, the guy went on a race win streak of 5 in a row in the middle of the year. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, he looks unbeatable. He looks untouchable. There was a point in this season where I felt that Alex Marquez was the guy to beat in this class. And now he's making it look so easy. He could put it on the podium anytime he wanted, right?
Yes.
And now he just doesn't look like that guy.
It seems like he's tight. Like he's now gotten tight. Like he's thinking about the championship. And Mark doesn't do that. Mark just goes out and races.
Well, he knows he has the ability in his mind to draw back on races from past and go, I can win every race. I mean, look, the guy's he's in another class all by himself. It's not even fair of us to compare his brother to him. It's not even
no, and I'm not comparing. But what I am saying is,
but I agree with you. No, but I'm saying I agree with you.
You don't think the Spanish press is? MotoGP is huge in Spain, 100%. Right? You don't think that Alex is listening to what's being said? When Alex started to dominate, all of a sudden it was like, how great would it be if the brothers win and da da da. And so I'm just saying there's got to be an underlying amount of pressure there somewhere. And if they're not hitting the setup and they're not doing the things, and now all of a sudden you have this surge, not a resurge, but just a straight up surge of KTM and getting the bikes right, compared to where they were at the beginning of the season. And Jay, what's interesting is they do a post race press conference. So they do the initial press conference like in Parc Ferme. But then later on, after things calm down, some of the commentators at MotoGP get kind of like it's almost like a one-on-one. They're hanging out and stuff. And in that interview, Jorge Martin basically alluded to the fact that he thought he had enough pace to pass Brad Binder, but basically he's giving KTM a chance to win the championship for the future.
Well,
and I'm like, I was like, whoa,
that's great.
Teamwork. Like, he didn't come right out and say it. He kind of backed off a little bit and said, no, listen, Brad was too fast. I didn't have the pace. I mean, at the end of the day, he finishes 1.9 seconds behind him, but he certainly looked for a few laps in the middle of that race, or middle end of that race, that Martin was right on Brad Binder. And then it was all of a sudden he just started losing some pace. And I was like, very interesting.
Crazy, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you. And Luthi was so kind of funny because Luthi was just charging through, got up there, and then looked like he was going to keep going, and then just kind of fell back to 6 seconds. I don't know, man. I feel uneasy. I feel like the way I feel about it is he's not prone to not making mistakes. And if you saw like what I saw, and I know you did at Motegi a week ago, I just thought, man, he could have handed a bunch of points away really easy there. And then this weekend again, he's not even sniffing the front, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I agree with you because there has been some guys this year that have stepped up only to, like Augusto Fernandez ends up 19th in this race.
That's what I'm saying. It's like he's got magic.
Insane, right? It's just insane.
It's insane. Speaking of insane, Jay, let's talk about Moto3, because in the Moto3 class, only 2/3 of the field actually finished this race. 19 finishers and 10 non-finishers in this one. But it did crown a world champion, and it was done in perfect style. Lorenzo Della Porta ends up winning the race by 77 thousandths of a second over Ramirez. He takes the number 1 plate. Arenas in 3rd, Suzuki in 4th, McPhee in 5th. You had Binder, Sasaki, Booth Amos, Arbolino in 9th, Nepa in 10th, Foggia, Fanati, Lopez, Ayogura, and Jakob Kornfeld rounding out your top 15. You had some big name non-finishers: Masia, Vietti, Toba, Migno in this one. Just Garcia out of it. Aaron Canet, of course, out of it as well. So, Jay, if we look at it, it was crazy. It was 6 laps to go. There were 17 riders in the front group. That's not even a stretch. In 6 laps to go, there were 17 riders. By the way, 19 finished, but a bunch fell out between 6 and 0 laps to go. But with 6 laps to go, they were within 2 seconds of each other. I just thought the race was insane. Number one, and I think Lorenzo Della Porta just needs to get I've kept myself out of trouble trophy. He won the world championship and he deserves that trophy. But I'm saying how he kept his nose clean. He did it, I think, in great style. He did it from the front. It's like a bicycle race, when you're in the peloton in the Tour de France, if you're in the middle of the pack, you're going down at some point. And if you look at the rider who has the yellow jersey, he's surrounded by people that will keep him towards the front because the front's the safest place. And it seemed to me that Della Porta, and he was shuffled back to 7th, 8th at times, but he just kept going to the front. I think just to keep himself safe, be my guess.
Well, I think that you talked about the 10 non-finishers, and there wasn't one that wasn't more important than Aaron Canet crashing in turn 1 pretty spectacularly. He has just given this championship. I wouldn't say he's given it away. He's had some really bad luck. He's been taken out, he got taken out in Malaysia, Thailand. His bike broke at Mazzano. Aaron Canet put together a really good challenge for the championship this year. I really think that young man matured a lot, but he fell off in turn 1 here in that big group, like you were saying, which could happen. He needed to win this race to kind of keep things going. I think it was only I think Della Porta had to score 3 more points than Canet to win the championship. So, Canet had to finish in front of him and slid off in turn 1. But what you said I really like is the resolve that Della Porta had. Once he knew that Canet was out, then it was almost like it freed him up. Like, it freed him up to just go after the win. And when you get shuffled back to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, just like you talk about the peloton, which I think is insane in the Tour de France and all bicycle races, your exposure rate of incident is so high, isn't it?
Yes.
So he was taking himself out of that exposure rate of being able to be cleaned out. I think it's even makes you feel better when it's your teammate right behind. What a day for the Leopard Racing guys to have their guys come home 1-2 and win the championship. I mean, it just doesn't really get any better than that.
It doesn't. I thought that the heartbreak for me was Suzuki. I thought Suzuki rode really well from the 658 Squadron team, and he was leading on that lap, beginning of the last lap, I think. And in a blink of an eye, he was shuffled back to fourth. I mean, it was just what a race. Obviously, you know, with the championship on the line, all that kind of stuff, it was absolutely spectacular. I loved watching the race. My heart was throbbing. Great. You know, it really was. It was pounding.
Yeah, it was good.
You know, I was just like, oh man, what's going to happen? And it was so weird too, because I kept going. My eyes were just focused on Della Porta the whole time. Like, can he make it? Can he make it? Yeah. Can he make it? Are we going to go one more round in this championship? Because if Della Porta had crashed and Canet was already out, then we would have been in the same situation basically the next week. Which would have been
a 47-point lead with 2 races to go. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, you know, it's you know, I like it when I'm not a fan of when championships end early and all that, but I look at it like that's what it's all about. When you're eliminating people from championships and things because you have been the most consistent and you've won races and you've rode your butt off, you deserve the championship. And I was really happy for Della Porta. And you know what's really interesting is when you watch these races, especially a long series like the MotoGP guys have on their calendars, the really interesting thing to watch is just you get to see riders go through the ups, you get to see them go through the downs, you get to see them have some adversity. And that's the thing that really it blows me away about this Moto3 class, because I think it's the hardest championship in the world to win. I don't think that there's a harder championship than that one right now to win. Now, people are going to say, well, yeah, but you got to go beat Marquez in MotoGP. I get it. But I'm saying that on a week-in, week-out basis, you have 20 guys in a lead draft. To keep yourself out of the struggles or keep yourself out of the trouble that can lead to having that many people around you, I think it's a very difficult championship to win, and he's very, very well deserving. Moving forward, Greg, World Superbike this weekend was at one of my favorite places, Doha in Qatar. What a great racetrack! It's in my top 5. That's probably my top 5 favorite tracks that I've ever raced. I think that when you look at it, somebody just put. I was way off. I said that I think Bautista was going to probably right.
Yeah, you
I'm
did.
going to call myself out on this.
Yes.
Call myself out. Bautista, I thought would win these races. He didn't. He ends up finishing second in the second race. And on the podium in the Super Pole race, but he was fourth in the very first race. Johnny Rea, I don't really think I need to go through the results of all three. No. I think that there's a couple things that we talk about. I think Johnny Rea and his defiance of letting anybody even have a sniff of confidence or focus going into 2020. I think that Johnny Rea this particular weekend was unbelievable. What he was able to do and run away at that track the way he did. It's a very difficult place to get away most of the time, but 3 wins out of 3. I would say that, who would have saw that coming, but I don't think we should be surprised.
I was a little surprised because of the amount of straightaways, but then when you really started to analyze the way he was riding that motorcycle, not only does, as you know, Qatar have a lot of straightaways, but it also has a lot of long corners, which is you could easily see the Kawasaki shining. When in the corners, especially going into the corners, he was making up some really good points and a really good time on that one. So
there was that's great that you bring that up. And real quick, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Greg, but you bring up such a good point there, because adversely, if you watch. And I know the track pretty well. And there's just one big, long straightaway, Greg. A lot of these corners at Doha flow really nice. There's really only one kind of stop and go corner in the middle of the track, turn 6, I think it is. And I think that might have been where I made my biggest error in thinking that when the Yamahas, the Kawis can roll through corners, they tend to not lose as much, it would seem. It's the real stop and slow where the Ducati can use its grunt off the corners. But where I'm going back to this, you talk about the Kawasaki tipping in easy and the Yamahas as well. But did you notice how early Bautista would tip in some of the faster corners compared to others?
Yes, I did.
And as a racer, what does that normally tell you?
I don't know what.
I knew you wouldn't know that. I asked as a racer. That was my own fault, Greg. I shouldn't have said as a racer, because we all know who I'm talking to here. What it basically means, G-Dub, is that when you start tipping in early, it's because you don't have a lot of confidence in the front end of the bike. So you can't take it to the point that you really want to take it to and then turn it on its side because you're worried about losing the front. He was tipping in early everywhere in the fast stuff.
Why do you tell me this now? Why didn't you tell me that while I was racing? I tipped
20 years ago.
I tipped in early all the time. It's because I had no confidence in the front. Son of a bitch. Yeah. All right, I got it now. Hold on, let me write that down. No
Better
confidence.
tell Chuck to get that WorldSBK bike ready and you're going to have another go.
Get on that treadmill and rip it.
No, but the thing is that I was such a tell for me when I watched that race. I was watching, I was thinking, man, the 3 rights that are towards the end of the lap there are 3 of the most fun right-hand turns you can have. And he was in so much earlier than everybody else. And he just couldn't, it just seemed like he was scared to take it that little bit further down and tip the bike in. And Chaz looked a lot better. I mean, looks like Chaz could go into 2020 with his head, pretty high. What did he have podium and did he finish on the podium in all 3, Greg? I can't remember if he didn't finish on the podium in the I don't think he finished on the podium in the
no, I can't remember what are the
race.
Points. So you get 12 points for a win in Super Pole race, and then you get
I'm looking at it right now.
Second. I can't. I don't think Chaz did. I think
he was 5th. He was 5th in the Super Pole race. So
which is 5 points. Okay.
Which is 5 points. So looking at it though, I think that the big thing for the weekend, there was still a lot of money and prestige up for grabs because you had Alex Lowe's, Michael Vandermark, Toprak Raskatioglu. Haslam was even in with an outside chance to get 3rd in this championship. So, when you look at kind of the shuffling of the seats that have gone around, there was a lot of interesting factors from where I wanted to watch it. And it's not just because I know Alex well. I really like Michael Vandermark. He's a great guy. Haslam has always been super cool. So it was really interesting to watch because the dynamic of those 4 riders, when you look at it, Toprak takes Alex's seat. Alex has taken Haslam's seat. Haslam's gone. Vandermark is kind of the guy that Yamaha chose. So you kind of had all this kind of craziness going on. And Alex really stepped up on the weekend. I thought that was a weekend that as a young rider and a guy moving on to Kawasaki, I feel like that was a pretty incredible weekend for him to walk out of there 3rd in the points and kind of win that little race within a race there.
Couldn't agree more. But what I want to say, though, about Jonathan Rea before we get off this topic is that, Jason, look, I want you to look across, just think across the big championships, okay?
Yeah.
British Superbike Championship, MotoAmerica Championship, MotoGP World Championship. Jonathan Rea finished every single race he entered. Every single race. And keep in mind, almost every weekend they were racing 3 races. So you know what I mean? And there's a couple. There was Assen, obviously, where they only raced 2. There was Imola, where they only raced 2. But every race he finished. And I think his lowest finish was 5th place in the Super Pole race in Misano.
Is that the one where he flipped? Like he literally held onto the bike and the bike flipped and he crashed.
He crashed,
flipped it over the top of him,
and still finished 5th. Right?
The bike actually, he held onto the bike and went up over the top of him and held onto it, picked it up, and kept going.
Unbelievable.
Unreal.
He ends the season, Jason, with 663 points. 663. Lowe scored 341 in 3rd place.
Yeah.
Like Lowe's finishes with 341 points, 322 points behind Jonathan Rea. And Johnny Rea said it afterward in a post-race interview that he met one of his goals in his racing career, which was to finish every single race. Marquez hasn't done that. Krummenacher didn't do it. Cameron Beaubier hadn't done it. You know what I mean?
That's such a hard thing to do.
It's such a hard thing to do. And now add the fact that you're racing 3 races a weekend. I mean, it's gnarly. It's amazing. And it's so crazy because as impressive as Marc Marquez's championship has been, I would argue and say that Jonathan Rea's championship has been equally impressive, especially with the way the season started off. And especially because, by the time they get to Imola round 5, they are so far on their back foot and so far behind in this championship that you think, never going to happen.
Well, and the fact that he was able to get those seconds and just continue to get those seconds. And I loved it how everybody was like, oh, Johnny Rea's crying about about losing, and like, he's a racer. That's what you do when you're not winning. You're crying. So, on the last note, and we've talked about this prior, and I know in the off season we'll talk and do some previews and post reviews maybe of these championships that we get so lucky enough to talk about. On Bike Sport News this week, I think it was a couple of days ago, I read it. The headline is a Batista headline that says, "Easy to win a race, difficult to win a championship." Now, this stuff blows me away because I can understand saying something like that if you didn't win the 11 first races in a row. Like, you won 11 races. At that point, I hate to break it to you, the pressure's on the guy finishing second every weekend to even hope to even get close. Don't you learn from that and at least think to yourself, okay, if we go to some tracks where the Kawasaki might be a little better, I got to just figure out a way to bring this home so I don't just continue to toss points down the road. Again, the biggest collapse I've ever seen in any championship ever. I've never seen anything like it. And I fear that I don't know, Greg. I don't know if Redding's as good as Batista as far as, can he go dominate a championship and win in World Superbike the way Batista did at the beginning of the year? Because now all these manufacturers, their bikes getting a little bit closer, get a little bit better. I think Chaz could be a threat next year. Just his consistency has to be there. But really good World Superbike season. I think it's going to be really fun and interesting to watch next year. We're going to have a lot to talk about with all these different guys that are going to be jumping seats and some new players maybe coming in.
Yeah, for sure. Let's touch on World Supersport really quickly, Jason, because we have to send our congratulations out to Randy Krummenacher, who ends up finishing 5th in the race and wins the World Championship over his now departing from World Supersport and going to team with Garrett Gerloff, Caricasulo. So Lucas Mayes, actually on the Kawasaki, wins by 0.8 of a second over Jules Cluzel, who I thought had a really good start to the race, led the race, and he really wanted to try to win this championship because he was still mathematically in it. Vinales, another podium for the Spanish rider Vinales, was great. And so then it was Caricasulo and Krummenacher. So congratulations to Randy Krummenacher. I thought it was a very entertaining race, as typical for World Supersport, Jason. Lead changes and those types of things, and some people banging into each other. And I thought you really got to keep an eye on Mayes, Cluzel, and Vinales moving forward in 2020, because they seem to be the riders that are going to be at the front constantly.
Kind of like a resurgence of kind of a little bit of a resurgence, it seems, for the Kawasaki team and the Pacetti Racing. I think next year will be a good season in this. The guy I keep an eye on is Perolari, who ended up 6th on the GMT 94 team. He got signed to ride for a good friend of mine, Christoph Guillot, who runs that team. Moving on, it'll be interesting to see how that all plans out, where it looks like Krummenacher might end up next year. Did you watch the whole race, right? Did you see when he crossed the line and came? You know how they always do the garage, kind of the garage shot of people. Did you notice that at all?
Yeah, I did.
But you
got to tell people why though. You know what I mean? You got Krummenacher.
Well, basically, last 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago in Argentina, Krummenacher comes out and says that that the Evan brothers team they want
sabotage.
They're sabotaging him. They want Caricasulo to win. And I'm sitting there thinking, you dope. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're sabotaging yourself now for the final race of the year. And if you watch the race, both those guys, I mean, they've been up at the front all year. They were never factors in this race at all as far as winning it. But what was ironic to me is there was literally, normally they show a team of people that are happy about the championship. There was 2 guys. And I'm glad you're laughing and you saw it too. There was 2 guys and they kind of didn't know what to do with each other. I kind of almost believe Krummenacher right now, because it was almost like, yay, like we won, good.
Yeah, but it was a weird reaction.
It was awkward, man.
It was, yeah.
It was awkward, yeah. It was. And I was sitting there thinking, I wonder if G-Dub saw that, And
yeah, it's too bad. In a way, it's too bad Caricasulo's leaving, because I would love to see this play out for a whole nother season.
It would have been interesting. It would have been interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, who wants Krummenacher now? I mean, he's got the number 1 plate, but if I'm a team owner, I'm going, man, if this guy doesn't get what he wants, he's quote unquote honest,
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I'll let you know a little secret. that I found out.
Okay.
Our good friend and counterpart over in World Superbike, Steve English, I listened to his podcast last week on my way to Chuckwalla, and he's a great guy, is Steve. Anyways, he said that there's word of Krummenacher maybe going to the MV team, which because I've known this for a year or two now, that Krummenacher, he doesn't make any money racing motorcycles. Guy won the world championship, didn't make any money. Now there's a chance that he could possibly go take, what he did this year and plug it into an MV Augusta ride and maybe get the chance to go over there. So just listen to Steve talk about that a little bit last week. It sounds like that could be an opportunity for him.
Cool. That'd be neat.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So congratulations once again, Randy Krummenacher, on your world championship. You deserve it, man. Took him 24 years, and he deserves it.
Yeah, and did you get to watch World Supersport?
Oh,
or 300 World Supersport?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was an incredible race up front, man. There was just a gaggle of Kawasaki's all racing it out. You want to go through the results real quick?
Yeah, I can do it. Daru ends up winning it, and it's a bummer because this is a one race I just didn't get to see. Moifels ends up second. Erechi finishes third. Gonzalez Anacrasco's fifth. On back down. And then, we had one of our own over there, Dallas Daniels, who, looking at a post that he had made, he was not happy with himself at all. He said that basically he finished 21st because people fell out. And I think he doesn't need to be quite that hard on himself. I don't know anything about the team he was on. I don't see anybody else. I guess his teammate ended up 16th up the road a little ways.
Yeah.
So, and another one of his teammates, I'm sorry, I don't even know how to say his name, Aradre. Anyways, he ended up 11th. Aradre, maybe? Yeah. So when you look at it...
no, 8th place was another one of his teammates.
Yeah, so he's got quite a few guys there. Look, obviously they've got a big team of riders. What his bike was like and all that, I'm not sure. Haven't really talked to Dallas, so it's not really fair of us to comment on his weekend, other than I know he didn't end up where he wanted to end up. But what an experience. He said it was just an incredible experience getting to go over there and ride at Doha. And I would agree with him.
And he finished. So basically what happens, Jason, is you have there were, I believe, 8 riders all covered up, like with a lap to go. And Anna Carrasco was on pole at a 2:14.1. And then she gets out to a good start and she gets roughed up and she starts roughing people up right back. Anna Carrasco ends up getting, and now keep in mind, it was a battle between Carrasco and Daru for second in the world championship. And Carrasco ends up getting the fastest lap of the race at 2:13.7. But I guess you could say kind of putting herself in a bad position on the last lap. She gets shuffled back to 5th, and Daru ends up getting second in the championship with the win. So good. I'm not sure what's going to happen to Anna Carrasco. I know, Jay, I don't know if you saw it or not, but World Superbike today made the announcement that they're going to Spain. They're racing in where they
Catalunya. Catalunya, isn't it? They're going to Catalunya.
Is that where they're going to Catalunya? Yeah.
So I think they're going to Catalunya.
And she was part of that presentation and all that stuff. So, I mean, she's deeply entrenched, as she should be, as she gives the number 1 plate away at the end of this, the season is over. But I thought she did a great job.
She's up third. I mean, what a great way to come back after you're winning your championship, come back the following year and finish third.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the real deal. It's great. And obviously what I'd love to be able to see is some of these ladies really make that transition to the 600 and put their foot forward. I know Maria Herrera had some problems, I think, with her team, which usually always has something to do with funding or something. But, she hasn't raced the last 2 rounds or 3 rounds in 600. But, yeah, I mean, hopefully she's really intertwined with that World Superbike Kawasaki team as well. You see all those guys, Johnny Rea and all of his team and crew, they all come over to the winner's circle, winner's podium area when she's there. So, yeah, like you said, she's pretty entrenched in that series and a great world champion.
All right, Jason. Well, we know that Brandon Paasch, the American from New Jersey, ended up winning the British Superbike Moto3 Championship. Last weekend, I guess. We said that we were going to have him on. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And keep in mind that, he's the 2016 MotoAmerica KTM RC Cup champ and now this BSB 2019 Moto3 National champ. Now, last week, he wraps up that championship. And do you realize... Jason, I know you realize this, but he was the first American to win a British championship. So there you go. But anyway,
Yeah,
I had a chance to talk to him, and the first thing I did was congratulate the guy. Like, hey, man, congratulations on the championship, and tell me about the season.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy year, to be honest, with starting at the Daytona 200, finishing fifth in the end after leading like 15, 20 laps, and then going over to Spain and doing some testing and driving to Portugal and doing the first round of the Junior World Championship in Estoril and running 16th, catching a group of 4 in front of me in the race, and then having a problem with the throttle position sensor and having to retire with like 8 laps to go, and then we went to BSB and started the year perfect. Did the double at round 1 at Oulton Park, and then the next round we went with a second and a first, and we were like, man, this is going to be a really great year, and there's not really much that can stop us. And then we hit Knock Hill, and I went out and got a second, and then DNF'd in the second race. I made a small mistake and crashed in the grass out of second. And then we went to the next round, was Cadwell Park, I think, and had a disaster of a weekend and crashed out of both races and actually lost the championship lead for a bit there. And kind of that was kind of our all-time low at the middle of the season, was just crashing out of 3 races in a row and then losing the championship lead. And the very next race for me was Silverstone, the GP. And it was kind of tough going in there with my confidence all messed up from just crashing 3 times in a row. But yeah, we did the GP, became the first American to race in Moto3 World Championship. And it's kind of been a dream season after that, just build my momentum back up with tons of a bunch more podiums and a bunch more race wins. We ended the year with I think 7 race wins, 6 seconds, a third, and 3 DNFs, and 1 fifth. So it's been a pretty consistent year for us towards the front, and yeah, kind of amazing.
Well, I think it's great. Anybody that knows Brandon or doesn't, you should, because he's a good guy to start with. He's one of those kids that just wants it so bad, and there's been a few guys in front of him that have been the exact same way. But Brandon, just, you got to think outside the box, and it's something that he has done. I mean, when you just read that it was 2016 he won that MotoAmerica championship on the KTM RC Cups, man, I can't believe it's been 3 years already. Like 3 years it's been since he won that. And he found a path to head over to England and go race a Moto3 bike. I know that's where his heart has been, is to get on bikes, more Grand Prix style motorcycles. But the kid can literally ride anything. Doesn't matter what it is. He can ride it, Cam Brandon. And I think that for him to go over there in another country, it's good he didn't have to learn the language, although I'm sure some of them I'm sure some of them northerners up northern England and into Scotland were hard to understand, but for him to do that, pretty incredible stuff. Really good for Brandon.
Well, now he's only 18 years old, and it wasn't the perfect season, but given what he went through in 2019, I asked him, like, when you look back on this season, what do you think there'll be things that you learned?
To be honest, I think I learned a lot about riding a motorcycle on the limit, just because of my size versus the Moto3 and how hard I had to ride the thing to keep it working. And then I think a lot of it is more mental than anything, because my last championship in MotoAmerica, I was quite young, and pressure and nerves and everything doesn't really get to you when you're a little bit younger and you don't really think about it. And then this year, when you got a bunch of people that are like, hey, you need to win this, you need to do this, you need to do that, it's a lot more pressure and a lot more nerves to take on, and just learning how to deal with that kind of stuff, and keeping your head cool on a race weekend, and not letting things get to your head, and just working through problems instead of kind of freaking out and giving up.
I'm not going to lie, Jason, listening to him say that he was 15 when he won the first championship, and now he's only 18, but I can't even imagine the maturity level, I barely matured from 15 to 18, but
you barely matured from 18 to 50.
Well, that's what.
I mean, let's be honest,
All right, that's fine. That's fair. That's fair. But you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. I do. I get what you're saying, G-Dub. For sure. Yes.
You're such a douche. All right, douche.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
that's nice.
But good comments from him. But what do you think about what he said about? Do you think that in 10 years from now, as he looks back on this, that what he's telling me now, you think it'll be the same thing, or do you think it'll be something different?
Well, you always draw on your past. I mean, that's what you got to do. You have to draw on your past. And he's got Paul Allison's in his corner, and I know Paul fairly well. And there were times this year where he would send me a text, say, "JP, the kid's down. He's a little bit this." And those three races in a row that he had his incidents in. The problem is that when you're that far away from somebody, when you're 6,000 miles away from somebody, it's hard to really be there for him. If you can put a text in or a call in or whatever, that means a lot to somebody, but he'll be able to always draw back on this year. I mean, to take the chance and just go over to England and do what he did, that's something that he'll be able to draw back on in years to come, whether it's, wherever he ends up, he'll be able to do some of that.
Now, winning this championship has opened up some new opportunities for the New Jersey native. Now, teams are talking with him from MotoAmerica, from the British Superbike Series, and from the CEV Spanish Championship. All that sounds great, but it's not as easy as you might think.
Yeah, I just really need to make the decision on what I want to do and kind of think about it long term and see where it's going to put me in the future. Because one wrong move and you could just not make it. So you kind of have to be a little bit strategic about where you put yourself and stuff like that. So we're just kind of weighing out our options right now and seeing where we can go and doing some tests with some teams and just kind of feeling it out and seeing kind of what I like more. But yeah, if anything, it kind of makes it a little bit more tricky, to be honest, because now if you don't have a good season, everybody's going to be like, huh, I wonder what happened to this guy. So I don't want to do that. I want to go somewhere where I know I can do well and go with a team that I know is 100% capable of winning and have a good crew that's really into it as much as I am. So we're just going to put all those factors together and see what we come up with and see what the best option is for next year.
It kind of sounds like, just with the pauses in his voice, how heavily it's weighing on him, you think?
Yeah, you know what, though? It's way better to have those pauses of where do I go rather than what is actually out there for me. How
True.
much money do I have to raise? Where do I got to try to find sponsorship? What series can I run? Who really wants me or who really wants my money? This is a much better position for him to be in. And the fact is that it is strange. When you grow and you mature and then you go accomplish something like he did this year, you don't want to fall off the train, Greg. You know what I mean? You want to try to find, okay, now I've shown that I can do that. I can't be in that class anymore. I can't do that again. So I've got to figure out what is the next best move for me. And he's got a team of people around him that I'm sure that he'll go to and talk to, figure some of that stuff out. And like you said, I mean, it's really nice that he could have 2-3 offers to be able to get on a good bike. His thing now is going to be, what's his most competitive package? What, looking into a team's history and those kind of things are things that are going to be of importance when you come to make a decision of where you're going to end up.
Yeah. Now, I've heard Paasch talk about his goals from the past on podcasts. You talked about it too, Jason. Moto3 was one of his goals, but with another year of experience, his goals have changed a little bit of where he wants to end up, and it might surprise some people.
So to be honest, I really want to go to Moto2 World Championship. That's just been a goal of mine for a long time. I mean, before that, it was all I ever wanted to do was go to Moto3 World Championship. And the past couple of years, we kind of realized, hey, that's not really going to work, just purely because I'm 6'1" and heavier than everybody else on the grid. So I accomplished that goal in a way this year where I did one race in World Championship and but yeah, I want to go to Moto2 World Championship. So I think for me to do that, I need to be on a Moto2 bike as long as possible before I go to the World Championship. So whether that's, okay, let's go next year, we'll do a year British Championship Moto2 with a couple of CEV races and that kind of thing. Or we go, okay, let's go to CEV Moto2 Spanish Championship for the next 2 or 3 years. And then we say, well, you're at the front of here, let's go to World Championship. But to be honest, I think that's kind of the path. Like, I feel like you need to be on a Moto2 bike if that's what you want to do, is go to Moto2 World Championship. The people that I've talked to, riding a 600 doesn't really prepare you well enough to jump on a Moto2 and be quick right away. So we kind of want to try and just get me on those bikes for as long as possible before I make the jump to the World Championship if I get the opportunity.
Smart, but that's decision making. I think, though, with Brandon, what I would not want him to sell himself short on is he's so adaptable. He's ridden so many different bikes. If you give that kid enough time on any bike, it's not going to be hard for him to pick up. He's very well. His motor's always driving forward. He's very much he's a fit kid. The Moto3 thing just didn't happen soon enough. He's a giant, so the Moto2 bikes will be great for him. I mean, he's not as big as Baldassarri and some of the guys that I've seen in Moto2 that have had success. So I got to think that the Moto2 thing for him, it wouldn't be a bad place for him to go. And even moving forward, even a couple years, 2-3 years, I just think that when you go to that paddock, Greg, it's so political, isn't it? I mean, it's just a very political paddock. Is Moto2 and
is MotoGP in general?
MotoGP in general, yeah. But I mean, look at Joe Roberts this year. There are times when Joe is 0.8 off and he's 23rd.
Yeah, it's
so competitive and so hard. But that's not saying that Brandon couldn't do that. Of course he could do that. He just needs time. He could ride a 600. I think he'd be a tremendous big bike rider too. I think if there was a team that had that were really looking for a young guy to put a superbike underneath, whether it's here in MotoAmerica or anywhere in the world on a superbike, if you give him the right crew chief and the right kind of people around him, I think he would be a real weapon on 1,000 as well. He's just got a lot of bike handling control, and I think that he would be good on that.
Yeah, I'm in his corner for sure. Our interview was really extensive, actually, including what he thought about American racers' perceptions in Europe. And he was well-wishing Garrett Gerloff and Rocco Landers as they head to Europe. We talked about the impact of himself and Rocco and Garrett on the perception of American racers in Europe and how they're going to do. And there's not enough time to go into all that, but it was a really good interview. So I'm really thinking about, maybe putting the longer form interviews that I do up on maybe Patreon and having, people go to Patreon and be able to listen to some of these interviews. So if you're listening this deep into this podcast and you think that's a good idea, just shoot me a message and let me know, because it's something I'm thinking about. I have so many great interviews over this past year. We're sneaking up on a year, Jason, of doing this podcast. I mean, this is episode 56, but we did a couple times. We did 2 a week, so we're coming up.
So crazy.
Yeah, November. I think we started at the beginning or mid part of November last year. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
So,
I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
So I'm thinking, look, I have all these great interviews I've done with people, and I'll continue to do with people. So maybe put that type of stuff up, and then try to come up with some other added stuff. But that leads me to the race calendar, which, of course, this weekend you have MotoGP in Malaysia. You want to check that out. If you're in and around Las Vegas, NHRA Countdown to the Championship, that drag racing goes on. You want to follow some drag racing. It's so much fun. Get in the stands and bet on everything. I mean, everything, Jason. You would absolutely love it. I've been to drag races before where we would bet on, I bet you the guy in the right lane puts his right foot down first. I bet you the guy in the left lane creeps forward and the money's flying around. It's so much fun if you get with the right people. AMA National Enduro is in Stanton, Alabama. So get out and watch some racing. Well, this is going to do it for us, Jason. Tell us some final thoughts that you have before we head out of here. Anything?
First off, thanks, Brandon, for being on the show. And, I'm looking forward to see where he ends up. Sepang this weekend, Greg. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out as far as, I think it's pretty fast place. Will the Ducatis cut back up to the front? I guarantee you nobody had it on the deal that Pramac bike would beat Dovi, both Pramac bikes in one race. So will Rossi find pace ever again? He was talking about his bike being slow down the straights. I think, it's going to be another fun weekend of watching some racing. I'm headed back out to Chuckwalla, my home away from home again. Yeah. I'm out there for SoCal Track Days on Saturday, Sunday, and then we do our Members Day on Monday. So I'm out there for another 3 days. And but I've been playing a little golf, so I'm hoping to do a little of that, get my legs sorted. Have a great week, everyone.